Hey, it's Alex here. So in this video, we're going to be talking about key cutting and duplication, specifically for car keys. So let's get into the lesson. So we're going to be understanding the key cutting process, the types of key cutting machines, how to decode and duplicate different car keys. And I'm also going to give you a visual demonstration of cutting a car key. So now we're getting into the practical lesson. So this is where it starts to get really exciting. So let's get into this. So firstly, I'm just going to cover the super basics. So what is key cutting? So in definition, key cutting is the process of creating a duplicate key by shaping a blank key to match the original. Now, we don't just have to duplicate a key, we can also create a key from scratch. So when all the keys are missing to the vehicle, we can actually decode the lock, which I'll talk about in another video. We can actually decode the lock to get the key cut information, and we can then cut a key from scratch. So why this is important is obviously it's used for making spare car keys, helps to replace lost or broken keys. So often a key could snap and you wouldn't be able to trace that key if it's snapped. So you would have to be able to decode the key using a Lishi pick, and then you could cut the key from scratch. And this is essential for working as an auto locksmith. So this is a skill that doesn't really require a lot of manual dexterity. So more of the manual dexterity is in the Lishi picking and decoding. When you're moving on to the key cutting, it's much more just knowing what buttons to press, really, and obviously making sure you follow the correct procedures. So for an example, a customer lost their car key and needs a duplicate from an existing key. This is how you would cut the key, which I'll show you in this demonstration. So an introduction to key cutting machines. So a machine is essentially something that shapes a blank key to match the original key. It uses a cutter to carve out the correct pattern. So the types of key cutting machines you can get are manual key cutters, which are operated by hand. Requires some skill, but pretty minimal. You've got semi-automatic cutters. Now these are partially automated, but easier to use. Fully automated cutters. So these just use computers to cut with precision. And then you've got laser key cutters, which are needed for high security and modern car keys. So that's what we'll be getting into in this lesson, because most car keys out in the market now are laser cut keys. They don't tend to use the standard cut keys anymore. So if you're confused already, don't worry, I'll be getting into some of the terminology in this lesson. And like I said, you will be seeing a video demonstration as well of how the key cutting works. So right now, a top tip would be to just choose the right machine, which depends on the type of keys you will work with. So obviously we're going to be focusing on the laser key cutters, because like I said, the majority of car keys now use these type of cutters. So let's get into the manual versus automatic key cutting. So manual key cutting is really, when you're cutting house car keys and standard cut keys, you'll be using these manual key cutters. But if you're only going into the auto locksmith industry and you don't want to service homes, you only want to do cars, automatic key cutters are the way forward. So obviously the manual ones are a lot cheaper. They're prone to more errors because obviously they're not really laser cut. They're just really, it's more of your skills using that manual machine, and it's best for simple mechanical keys. So the automatic key cutting machine, which is obviously faster and more accurate, reduces human error, and it can handle complex laser cut and high security keys. So an example would be a modern car like a BMW requires laser cutting, while an older Toyota may use the traditional manual cutting, which I'll get into now. So firstly, to actually cut a key, we need to read or decode the key. So what is decoding? So decoding is the process of reading the bit indents on a key to determine the pattern. This would allow you to cut a key without having an original copy. So the methods of decoding keys are visual inspection. So once you get good at this, you'll be able to actually look at the key and determine the depths. You could use a caliper measurement, which is just like a simple hand tool that measures each depth of the cut precisely. 𝐓𝐿𝐒 tools, which are obviously the main tool which we're going to be using throughout your career. These decode the lock for you. Well, obviously once you know what you're doing, so once you pick the lock using the 𝐓𝐿𝐒 tool, you can then decode it in the open position. And then there's key code databases where you can actually contact a key code supplier, and they will be able to supply you with the correct cut sequence. And also, which I've missed out here, which is the main obvious one, which is actually tracing an existing key. So if a customer does present you with a key, you can simply trace that key using your automatic key cutting machine. That will trace it for you, and then you'll be able to copy the pattern. So let's say a customer loses their key, a decoder can be used to extract that pattern directly from the lock. So let's talk about traditional keys. So this is sort of the step-by-step process. This will be more for your house type locks. Now, the reason I'm covering this is so you know the difference, and you don't end up buying the wrong equipment. The difference between this is really like beginner stuff, but I thought I would cover it anyway. So what you would do is this is an example for cutting a traditional, say a residential house key. So you would put the original key in this clamp here, and what would happen is you would then line up a blank key here in this clamp. Now you would use this here, this arm here, which would rest on the shoulder of both keys, which would make sure they align correctly. So you would put the blank on the cutting side, you would align the keys for accuracy, turn on the machine, which would then rotate this key cutter, this wheel, and then you would trace the pattern. So here, I don't know if my mouse cursor is actually working, if you can see it while I'm recording, but this part here would actually trace over the pattern of the key, which would then, of course, follow the wheel would follow in the exact same pattern, and it will cut the blank key. And then obviously you would smooth the edges using this wire brush on the edge and test the new key to make sure it works. So a customer with, say, a 1998 Honda needs a simple duplicate of their mechanical key without any programming. It isn't a laser cut key. They would use this simple key cutting machine, but you don't have to go out and purchase one of these, because nowadays most of the laser cutting machines, the automatic key cutting machines, will also do these standard blanks as well, which I'll get into. So now let's get into laser cut and high security keys. This is going to be your main focus. So the difference between these is these keys have obviously a milled groove instead of the traditional cuts which you would get on the outside of the key. Is in the center of the key. So these are found in most vehicles, and they require special laser cutting machines. You wouldn't be able to do this by hand with a file or with a manual machine. You would need one of these automatic key cutting machines. Now the steps for duplicating these is quite simple. Let's say you've got the original. You would load that into the machine, and then you would simply press a button that says trace. And the pointer that you can see on the left-hand side in this machine is actually the tracer. So that would trace the pattern of an original key. And then you would swap out the original key for the blank key, and then the cutter would then copy that pattern into the key. Now, if you didn't have an existing key, you would actually manually type in the key bitting information into the machine, and that would then basically cut whatever information you've given it. So you would have given it a sequence of numbers, which you would have got from your 𝐓𝐿𝐼 picking, which we'll come to in another video. And then that would then copy the key for you. So then you would polish the key, test it for smooth operation. So laser cut keys have and enhanced security features and are harder to duplicate without the right tool. So if you didn't have one of these laser key cutting machines, it's near on impossible that you'll be able to do this business unless you were to order the key specifically. The problem with that, you know, you might be able to contact a supplier, give them the key information, tell them to send you a cut key in the post. The problem with that is if someone's stranded on the roadside, they're not really going to want to wait for you to, you know, start receiving packages in the post. You need to be able to work on the roadside to really excel in this business. So right now, let's get into a live demonstration of key cutting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you watch this this video of me cutting a key with a laser cut key. So what I want you to do is observe firstly how the original key is traced. Then I want you to take note of the alignment process. So how obviously once it's traced the key, how that information's then taken over to cut the new key, and then identify the finishing steps, obviously the polishing and testing. And then your goal for this is just to understand the entire key duplication process, before practicing on real keys. So let's get into that lesson now. So onto our machine, we select this little symbol here, which is for the make and the model. And then if you can focus in on the screen there, we've got a little bit of glare on the screen there. So if we go to Ford, so we've got Ford, in this case it's in Europe, we'll select that, and we've got a Ford Focus, so we'll just go to Focus, down here, enter, and it's a laser single side cut key and it's 10 cuts, so we know that. Especially if you've just decoded it, you'll know this information. And then press enter, and now it's giving us 3 options: to cut the key, to decode it, or info. If we already had our cuts and we knew what key we knew what cuts we were putting in, we'd go to cut, enter, and we'd select which cuts that we've decoded. So if we already had our sequence, we'd just go along and we could just put in the cuts like this. In this case we don't have that, we've already got a customer's key, so we're going to go to decode, and we select decode. Now it's asking us where to line up the key. So now going back down to our clamp here, we can focus in on that. We'd put the key in where it says position 4, so just try and get a good view there. So we'd put our little stopper on position 4. Now we know it's position 4 here because on this diagram here it says position 4, so we know that that's that little last groove here, that's our stopper position. Okay, so then the key will go in all the way to the stopper. We'll be putting the customer's key in there first because we're decoding. So put the customer's key in all the way, and we'll clamp it off. Make sure it's flat on the jaw. Remove the stopper, that's really important. And then moving back up to here, we'd just press enter for next, enter, and it will give us some information about the thickness of the key. Enter again, and now our machine's going to get to work decoding. And what that will do, the little pointer will come down and it will just tap into each cut, and it's just calculating the depth of each cut. There we go. And now those cuts have now been stored into the machine. If we can get a good focus on that. As you can see, it's now read the depths of the key. So what we'd do, coming back down to here, we would then remove our key. We can get a good focus, so it's a really bright light on the machine, so it's hard for it to focus. But we'll take the customer's key out. We'll then put the blank in, put in on stopper 4 again. We've got our blank key here. That goes in all the way, and we'll tighten it off. Remove the stopper, and this time we're going to close the lid because of the swarf that's going to fly around. And back onto the screen here, it says to cut, press enter. So I'm going to press enter there, and it's asking for direct copy or nearest copy. Always go for direct, because you just want to cut exactly what you've copied, and then enter. Enter again. Now our machine's going to get to work, and it's going to cut that key on one side. It's quite loud when it cuts. And you can see it's a really clever machine. It knows exactly what it's copied. There you go, so that's cut one side of the key. Now, you always have to cut both sides of the key for it to work. So we remove it, we put the stopper back in position 4, turn the key over and put it all the way to the end and tighten it off. Remove the stopper and just press enter again, and that will start to cut the other side. There we go, so that's our key now cut. What I usually do is just get a little paintbrush and take off the swarf. Now you should have an exact replica of the customer's key. So the next step would be to remove this little plastic insert, and you'll put your transponder chip into there, and you'll either clone the key or you'd program it into the vehicle. And that's going to be our next lesson. We're going to be using one of our key programmers, the 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒, to program this key. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that live demonstration there of using a key cutting machine specifically for a laser cut key. So here's a quick summary. So we talked about manual versus automatic key cutting, how to know when to use each one, decoding keys, which is essential for not only making duplicates, but also cutting a key from scratch. Laser cut keys, which require specialized machines like you've just seen, and avoiding the common mistakes by following precise techniques. Now, if you click the link in the description, you can grab a free course that's going to show you exactly that you're going to be able to get the full course, the auto mastery. Also subscribe to this channel so you're updated when we release any new videos, and the next lesson is going to be transponder key programming. So super excited for you to see that, and I'll see you there.